What are you going to attack? The Bible? Well, the Christians believe in the Bible. What makes Judaism Judaism is the Talmud, the oral law, the interpretations of the Bible. That's the part of Judaism that separates our religion from all the other religions that believe in the Bible. So to attack Jews, you had to attack the Bible. And when you say Ben Shapiro follows the Talmud, what makes anybody think that Ben Shapiro's, the criticisms you have of Ben Shapiro has to do with him following the Talmud? The Talmud is not another Bible. I mean, I really don't even understand. I do understand the question, but I want to demonstrate how absurd it is. Ben Shapiro follows Zionism. Ben Shapiro follows right-wing conservatism. Ben Shapiro follows the Old Testament. Ben Shapiro follows Ben Shapiro's own ideas. Ben Shapiro follows many things. Why attribute whatever you don't like about Ben Shapiro to the Talmud? Why? Did Ben Shapiro say, go ahead.
I'll field that, because from my observation as an outsider looking in, there is no question that because of the fact that so many of the anti-Zionist and anti-Israel Jews' voices are drowned out, and the pro-Israel, pro-genocide voices are accentuated in many respects, it creates that underlying what's under the surface that's lying there, which is anti-Jewish hatred. And I have been quick to point out in many instances where you have several commentators, content creators, if you will, that are making this a Jew problem and not a Israel Zionist problem, which is what it is, which is what it's always been.
You're correct. You're describing the motive. I'm asking about the logic. How does it make sense to somebody?
Much like people that don't take religious seriously, there is no logic. It's not supposed to be. It's very emotion driven, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that people want to be able to do something about what's going on, and then they see somebody like Jared Kushner making a presentation at Davos saying, "Oh yeah, we're now going to completely redevelop the Gaza Strip." It doesn't compute with the average person. And then naturally the inclination is just to say, well, this is a Jew problem, so let's just deal with them.
Okay. And now that you say it's a Jew problem because what makes Jews Jew is that Jews are the Talmud, now you attack the Talmud. There are two things I want to say. I want to say a little about Zionism and the Talmud, topic number one. And I want to say something about the Talmud, topic number two. The Talmud, first of all, needs not to be read. Reading it is not enough. It needs not even to be studied. That's also not enough. It needs to be deciphered. Every student of the Talmud knows that, like any data dump, especially the way the Talmud was designed with hundreds, thousands of commentaries. I literally downstairs in my study, thousands, not exaggerating, thousands of books of commentaries on the Bible and Talmud, thousands. And I don't have an exceptionally large library for a rabbi. It's not bad, but not exceptionally large for a rabbi. So I'll give you an example. First of all, okay, there was a history of this. There are many Christian, anti-Jewish clergymen who did this. They wrote books and pamphlets starting the 1200s. They forced Nachmanides, a sage in those days, to have a debate about the Talmud. They decreed burning cartloads of the Talmud, and the Talmud had to be defended against these type of things. There were court cases where authors of these pamphlets were exposed as not even knowing the difference between the name of a book versus the name of a rabbi. This is all ignorant stuff being taken out of context, not out of context. Some of it is lies. I mean, I'll give you an example. Let's deal first of all with some of this stuff. First, let me tell you the right way to study the Talmud. Some of these things that are quoted from the Talmud, they're just fake. So I have over here, I made a little collection of some of them. I have over here, I'm looking at it now, a screenshot of some of these Talmud quotes. One of them is from a book, Libra David 37. Now, there's no such book. Libra David is Latin. It's quoted all over online. To communicate anything to a goy about our religious relations would be equal to the killing of all Jews, for if the goyim knew what we teach about them, they would kill us openly. There is no such book. It does not exist. Okay?
That's a common quote. They're always like, they want to kill all the goyim.
Nobody wants to kill goyim. It is prohibited according to the Torah to kill goyim. It is prohibited. But hold on. We're not done. Then there's a quotation from a book, God Shas. A Jew may violate but not marry a non-Jewish girl. There is no such book. It doesn't exist. The word God Shas doesn't even mean anything. God was a son of Jacob, one of the tribes, and Shas is a acronym that has nothing to do with, there's no such book. The words don't even make sense. And the quotations are all lies. So number one, no one's allowed you're not allowed to kill goyim. You can't kill anybody. It's stupid that I even have to mention this. As far as the quotes are concerned, there's a mixture of out of context, open lies, things that I just told you literally made ex nihilo. But I'll give you an example of what the Talmud is and what it's not. When the Talmud discusses certain legal aspects of Jewish law, okay, it very often discusses, in general, this is the rule, it discusses the elements of offense of a certain crime. So there are 613 major commandments that Jews have to follow, okay? They're even, thou shalt not steal, but there's different types of stealing. In the 10 commandments, there's thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not burglarize, thou shalt not kidnap. There are different laws for each offense, right? Now, the Jewish law is very technical. There are certain elements of offense for kidnapping and certain things that I will do that are immoral, prohibited, criminal, but they're not technically kidnapping. I lock you in a room, right? I think in American law, that would be considered kidnapping if I lock you in a room and not let you out. Okay, in Jewish law, that's not considered kidnapping if I don't let you out. However, now if somebody were to see I'll give you a example that's being used. The idea that a girl under 3 years old, you're allowed to rape. That's all over these anti-Semitic. Okay, so let me explain that. You are not. It is prohibited. Okay, what's happening over there is they're looking at the elements of offense or even the civil liability of breaking someone's virginity. That's considered a crime. If an act of, if relations were done with a girl under 3, it's not considered breaking her virginity because she's not old enough yet to have the biological factors that would require for that to happen. However, that does not mean at all that it is permitted. It is prohibited. Anybody that does that is a disgusting pig, and it's a sin. Here's the rule. What they're not telling you is that according to Judaism, besides the technical laws that we have on the books, any immoral act is considered an abomination, especially when it comes to sexual crimes, is considered an abomination, is considered immoral, and is considered a crime. For example, let's go back to the Bible, okay? In Deuteronomy, it says that when the Jews were going into the Holy Land, it says that you should not commit the sins that the Canaanim, the residents of the land, committed before you. If you do, you will be kicked out the way they were kicked out. And it lists a whole bunch of sexual crimes that they committed, incest, things like that. Here's the problem that all the commentators ask. If you look in the Code of Jewish Law, you will find that many of those crimes are not prohibited. Non-Jews, who the Canaanites were, are only prohibited in 7 commandments. It includes sexual immorality, but there are particulars of that in that category, many of which are not prohibited to them according to biblical law. And yet, the Bible says that they were kicked out of the Holy Land and punished for violating them. The answer is that if you look in Baba Basra, that happens to be the name of the tractates that the anti-Semites thought was a person. Baba Basra, 16b, in the Tosafos, which is one of the commentaries, it says over there that that regarding sexual violations, even if something is not technically biblically prohibited by biblical law, it could still be an abomination if it's immoral. Lot, the biblical Lot, was considered a bad guy, and Abraham separated himself from Lot, our tradition says, because of what he did with his daughters. He slept with his daughters, even though that's not prohibited technically for a non-Jew. But the fact that it's not prohibited technically doesn't make it right. The biblical laws are not the only laws that are binding on people. Moral laws that a person's mind can discern on their own are binding on everybody, on all Jews and non-Jews, even without a technical biblical admonition. Okay, now if anybody's listening, any Talmudic scholars want to know where this thesis comes from, so technically it's from Rebbe Baruch Finkel. Okay, if you want, this was his thesis that I just described. But the Rabbi Nissim Gaon, in the introduction to the tractate Shabbos, he says that God gave written laws and God gave laws through common sense. And anything that our moral common sense says is prohibited is prohibited. The idea that, okay, well, you know, a girl less than 3 years old relations with the girl doesn't come under this particular prohibition. Yes, it doesn't come under the prohibition of breaking the Sabbath also, or eating pork. That doesn't mean it's okay. It's speaking about a particular thing. That's first. So the entire, I mean, I just gave, it's not my thesis. It comes from a very scholarly rabbi, an advanced thesis in how to understand Talmudic law. If there are other things like that too, you're not allowed to kill anybody. You're not allowed to, and also regarding punishments, they'll tell you, well, there's no punishment if you do such a sin. According to biblical law, sometimes the Beth Din, the Jewish court, is obligated to punish somebody. Certain sins, people get lashes. Certain sins, people get other punishments. And sometimes, for even greater sins, you don't get any punishment. Not because the sin is not more severe, but because the punishment prescribed in the Bible is not enough for that sin. So if the Bible doesn't prescribe a punishment for a sin, it sometimes, not always, means that God will punish the person even worse than the punishment that is prescribed by the Jewish court for a lesser sin. Meaning,
Rabbi, no, finish your thought, but I had something I want to interject.
Okay, meaning that don't give me this nonsense that Okay, it says this is okay, or that's okay, or this doesn't have a punishment, or that doesn't have a punishment. It's all originally bad faith. Literally, it was bad faith, anti-Jewish, anti-Judaism writings and pamphlets by people who believe that the Jews killed God and killed Christ, and it's a satanic religion, and they wanted to try to portray it that way. Now, when Israel is doing this, the second thing I want to say is that the Zionists hate the Talmud. The Zionists only follow the Bible, not the Talmud. It's the Talmud that says Jews are not allowed to wage war. It's the Talmud that says Jews need to be peaceful people. The Old Testament, you tell me, if you're familiar at all with the Old Testament, Joshua, Judges, even the 5 books of Moses, you tell me, if somebody wanted to create a violent religion, conquerors, right? A Molech.
Yeah.
All you need is the Bible, the Old Testament. Did you ever hear Benjamin Netanyahu quoting a Talmudic verse that says, go conquer the land? Amalek, this is biblical. And I want to read you some things. We need to understand this, that what the Zionists did was they removed the Talmud. They removed the Talmud, which requires Jews to be peaceful, which prohibits them from having an army in exile, which prohibits them from having a state in exile, which prohibits the Jews to wage wars of conquest. Even during the Second Commonwealth, the Second Temple period, there were no wars of conquest because we did not have a prophet in the days of Joshua. Those things in our tradition, the Jewish tradition, God made a judgment, which God does. Every day, God decides who lives and who dies. God decided these people, the residents of Canaan, they deserve to die. Their time is up. He could have made an earthquake. He could have made a volcano. He judged them, and through prophets, he said, okay, it is their time is up. But absent such prophecy coming directly from God, we are not allowed to go around killing people. You can't do that. And if you're going to say, well, come on, Rabbi, if Joshua conquered the land, this prophecy, that's just a technicality. No, without you cannot give me half of my religion and then say that that is what my religion says. The religion says if God himself, not anybody can say God himself came. If God himself comes, not I claimed he did, if he really did, and we have signs to ensure that prophets are real prophets, then the prophet follows God. We don't have any prophets today. And the Amalek thing, what the Zionists did was, and this is not just Netanyahu, I'm going to read you soon from some Zionist books. The Zionists removed the Talmudic interpretation of the Bible that says Joshua's war has nothing to do with future generations. Amalek has nothing to do with anything nowadays. Amalek are demons in human form, you could describe it. If I were doing the cinematography on a video about Amalek, so I would have, there's like this scene where, I don't know, a guy sticks his sword in the enemy, and then smoke comes out of this guy's dead body, and he's revealed to be a demon, not a human being. You know how that works? That's that. The Amalek are not humans. We cannot identify any of them nowadays. The 7 nations that they were commanded to kill no longer exist. There are no longer. Now, you want to have another religion? Zionism? They do. But don't blame it on Judaism. Judaism has nothing to do with this.